Optimism is running through U.S. financial markets this morning. The Dow has surged deep into positive territory after the president and his Treasury Secretary have suggested that the trade war with China may soon ratchet down.
CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich is in New York. Vanessa, Treasury Chief Scott Bessent spoke just moments ago. What was his overriding message?
Yeah, well, the Treasury Secretary speaking at the IMF, he said that there was an opportunity for a big deal with China, and that is encouraging news for investors on Wall Street. You can see markets holding steady during the entirety of his speech and the Q&A that followed. He did say, though, that he had some. He did say, though, that he had some criticism for China about their trade practices, essentially saying that the country is in economic troubles. Listen to more of what he said.
China's current economic model is built on exporting its way out of its economic troubles. It's an unsustainable model that is not only harming China, but the entire world. China needs to change. The country knows it needs to change. Everyone knows it needs to change, and we want to help it change because we need rebalancing too.
Now, the Treasury Secretary did not expand on his comments yesterday that he made to investors in private, saying that the trade war with China would de-escalate soon and that it is unsustainable, but he also did not walk anything back, and that was encouraging for investors on Wall Street. Traders are also holding on to, Pamela, what the president said yesterday about the head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. There was so much concern about whether or not the president would actually try to go through with removing Jerome Powell. That absolutely rattled markets, but the president saying yesterday in the Oval Office that he had no plans to terminate Jerome Powell, and markets really continuing that rally coming off of yesterday into today, and encouraged by what the Treasury Secretary just said, that there is an opportunity for a deal with China, but he did criticize the country, saying that they need to change their trade practices, but the U.S. would try to work with them on that, Pamela.
Also, we should note Elon Musk told investors yesterday that he plans to focus more on Tesla, rolling back his role from Doge after a plunge in profits. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there was a plunge in income for Tesla, 71% plunge compared to last year. That is absolutely significant. This is a company that was posting profits every single quarter, and a lot of people were looking at Elon Musk thinking that you're spending a lot of time at Doge and not enough time running your company. So we heard from Elon Musk yesterday, who said that he is planning to spend more time at Tesla, and look at shares right now up over 7% as investors are encouraged now that Elon Musk will be back to running his company again. The stock price of Tesla from the high when President Trump was inaugurated fell 50%. But as you can see, investors on Wall Street encouraged that he may be stepping back into that role. Elon Musk also talking about tariffs, though, saying that he thinks that there should be less tariffs. But of course, he said that it is up to the President of the United States. Pamela.
All right, Vanessa Yurkevich, thanks so much. Wolf?
All right, Pamela, there's more breaking news coming into the Situation Room right now. President Trump's shift in tone on his trade war may have been the result of a warning from some of the country's largest retail companies. CNN has learned that CEOs from Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's sent a very blunt message to the president during a meeting in the Oval Office. CNN's chief national affairs correspondent, Jeff Zeleny, is here with us in the Situation Room. So what's the message that got through to the president?
Well, it's very interesting. We've all noticed the president's change in tone over the last day or so. I'm told it's the result of a meeting in the Oval Office on Wednesday with those CEOs who are talking specifically about the warning for the supply chain disruption. And they said that the store shelves in some of the America's biggest stores could be empty in the coming weeks. And I'm told that that is one of the things that got the president's attention on this. And he really has ratcheted back his language against China on tariffs and other matters. And we're also just learning now that the president is actually taking a walk on the north lawn of the White House, kind of unusual. We're told he wants to put a flagpole there. I believe we have video of it. Let's take a look.
Losing $2 trillion a year on trade. Now we're going to be making money, a lot of money. So that's very good. Every country wants to partake, even countries that have ripped us off for many, many years. China is an example, but it's not just China. European Union, they ripped us off for many, many years, and those days are over. We're going to make a lot of money for our people. We'll be able to lower taxes substantially, and we're going to be proud of ourselves. We're not going to be a laughing stock that got taken advantage of by virtually every country in the world.
We thought you said you were going up to the lawn for a flag. What was going on?
We're putting up a beautiful, almost 100-foot tall American flag on this side and another one on the other side, 2 flags, top of the line. And they've needed flagpoles for 200 years. It was something I've often said, you know, they don't have a flagpole per se. So we're putting one right where you saw us, and we're putting another one on the other side on top of the mounds. It's going to be 2 beautiful poles. Paid for by Trump.
When did the flags?
They arrive in about a week or so.
Can you clarify, Mr. President, on China?
Yeah, we are going to have a fair deal with China. It's going to be fair.
Are you talking to them actively now?
Actively. Everything's active. Everybody wants to be a part of what we're doing. They know that they can't get away with it any longer, but they're still going to do fine. And we're going to have a country that you can be proud of, not a laughing stock all over the world for many years. You know, in 1913, they traded to the income tax system. We used to be all tariff, and we had no income tax, and we had the wealthiest country we ever had proportionately. From about 1870 to 1913, it was all tariffs, and we had more money than anybody. They had committees how to spend the money. They had so much money they didn't know how to spend. Then some brilliant person said, let's go income tax. Let's let the people pay. Now, we're going to be able to substantially lower taxes when this is finished.
So, how does it look in the meantime? Are you considering?
It looks good, yeah. No, it looks good.
While you're negotiating?
It looks good. We were losing anywhere from $3 to $5 billion a day. Think of it. We're losing billions of dollars a day under Biden and other presidents, frankly. But under Biden, it got really worse. China got out of control. We're losing $1 trillion a year. Trillion, not a billion, not a million, $1 trillion. And now we're going to be making money with everyone, and everyone's going to be happy. But we're no longer going to be the country that's ripped off by every country in the world. Thank you very much.
A few words about the Pope, sir.
So the president doing a familiar refrain there on the reason for tariffs. And Pamela and Wolf, you all know this is something the president has long believed in, the idea of tariffs. He said once again the country was better off with tariffs before income taxes. That is an entirely different time in our nation's history, a century ago. The challenge here for the president is getting these tariffs negotiated. What we're seeing right now is just in real time, a difference of advisors giving him a difference of opinion here. He supports the idea of tariffs, but he's been unable to sort of implement them. So on China, his softer tone on China also very important. The Treasury Secretary and others are trying to get him to make a deal with China. He's blinked in a respect. That's certainly what we're seeing there, but he was outside the White House looking at a place to put a flagpole. Of course, we know there's a mighty flag on top of the White House, but now apparently there'll be one on the North Lawn as well.
He says he's paying for it too, out of his money. That's what he says. But he's clearly moving away from the high tariffs that were imposed on China, and that's encouraging the markets.
It certainly seems to be. I mean, look, that is something, this trade war we saw really ratcheting up day by day, and we saw the fallout from that. So that's what his advisors, some of them, are trying to steer him back from. Also, a shift in tone with the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. He's been talking about wanting to fire him. That rattled the markets. Now he's saying he has no plans to do so.
And that's encouraging the markets as well.
There's no doubt about it.
He pays attention to the markets, even though he suggests sometimes he doesn't, but he really does.
Sure.
All right, Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much.
A big question this morning here in Washington and on Wall Street is whether the president has been convinced to ease up on his trade war with China and how long that could last. The markets think that the answer, at least in the short term, is yes, because look at the Dow, it's up about 600 points. That is after the president said yesterday he's likely to roll back some of the tariffs on China. And then his Treasury Secretary said this morning that he sees, quote, an opportunity for a big deal. CNN's Kevin Liptak is at the White House, where moments ago we did hear from President Trump himself. Talk about that, but also about your excellent reporting that tells us how we got to the point where the president basically blinked.
Yeah, and you're really seeing on two fronts here the president starting to ease up, at least in his rhetoric, on some of those harsh line comments that had been causing so much turmoil in the markets. And it all seems to be a result of this internal campaign to talk to the president about some of the real world effects that his rhetoric had been having. On the first front, this question of whether or not he would fire the Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell, the president saying yesterday that he has no plans to remove him from the post. Well, that came after some warnings from some of his top advisors about not only the market ramifications potentially, which could be worse than the trade war that he is now waging, but also some of the legal battles that would be ahead that no one in the White House was necessarily confident that they would prevail on. And so yesterday you see the president really easing up on that front. And then when it comes to China, you heard the president say that he would potentially be willing to lower substantially that tariff rate, which currently sits at 145%. Well, that came after a meeting with top retail CEOs here at the White House on Monday, people like the CEO of Walmart, of Lowe's, of Home Depot, who all warned about significant disruptions to their supply chain if this trade war with Beijing is allowed to go on for quite a long time. And so all of these kind of coming together and resulting in some of softening tones that we've been hearing from the president. Now, we did see him here at the White House earlier this morning. He was out on the North Lawn. He was actually surveying a position to build a 100-foot flagpole, but we talked to him on his way back into the building, and he sort of updated us on the state of these trade talks. Listen to what he said.
Tariff negotiations are going very well. We're dealing with many, many countries. They all want to be involved with America. We are going to have a fair deal with China. It's going to be fair.
Are you talking to them actively now?
Actively. Everything's active. Everybody wants to be a part of what we're doing. They know that they can't get away with it any longer, but they're still going to do fine.
So you hear him there saying that he's having active conversations with China. It's not entirely clear just how active those conversations are. We have reported that he is having some trouble getting the President Xi Jinping on the phone. And in fact, we just heard from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who said that the situation would need to seriously de-escalate between Washington and Beijing before active talks can proceed. Dana.
Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm joined here by a group of amazing reporters, CNN's Kayla Tausche, Franklin Foer of The Atlantic, and Ayesha Rascoe of NPR. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Just to sort of pick up where Kevin left off, a couple things. First of all, on the big picture of where we are right now, because it felt like the markets opened this morning. There was clearly a lot of excitement about the shift in tone again from the president yesterday with regard to China. Then he spoke, like Kevin was talking about, and he played a clip of it. And the markets are still up, but they're not up as high as they were before the president spoke. What does that tell us about just how volatile and uncertain the world economy is with regard to the whims and the decisions of this president?
I mean, there's no certainty, there's no clarity, and one of the reasons that the market pulled back a little bit was those comments that Kevin was just mentioning that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made about the fact that there are no active discussions going on between the U.S. and China, that Trump has been waiting for President Xi to pick up the phone and call, and he simply hasn't. Now, Trump can say that he wants a big and fair trade deal with China, but the reality is, in his first term, he reached one of those. China has not held up its end of the bargain. That deal took 3 years to reach, and it began with President Xi and his wife visiting Mar-a-Lago in the first 100 days of Trump's term. And even then,
was extremely thorny, was extremely contentious, and we're so far from those relations back then that I think it's notable what Treasury Secretary Bessent is saying, that we need a cool down before this can actually de-escalate.
And before I bring the others in, you have some new reporting on the other countries, scores of countries.
Yes. So on April 9th, when the president pressed pause on those very steep country-specific tariffs, he said that everybody is picking up the phone and trying to reach a deal. One of the reasons why the market has been down is because those deals have not materialized. There was a flurry of shuttle diplomacy. The White House said 75 countries had reached out, but as of now, just 18 countries have actually submitted proposals. And I'm told by some sources who have been briefed on these discussions that there are some nations that are extremely hesitant to give away the game or barter with any very specific proposal, while there are mounting legal challenges, companies, native tribes, the state of California, trying to sue the Trump administration, saying the president overstepped his authority, and there's a potential that a judge could pause these tariffs. And so if you're a country trying to figure out how to negotiate, why would you do it?
Well, not to mention that Trump is negotiating with himself right now. Yes. That he's already said there's going to be a substantial reduction without any concession from China. China believes that it holds the whip hand, that it has the leverage in all of these negotiations, which is part of the reason why it's not rushing to the telephone to engage in negotiations with Trump. They look at the global order, they look at the way in which all these nations around the world are recoiling at the United States. They're rushing into the picture as the defender of a rules-based global order in international free trade, and they're able to rack up wins here rather effortlessly.
And as you come in, I just want to say that we mentioned that China is definitely noticing. What is trending, the hashtag that is trending on social media inside China is Trump chickened out. Over 110 million views there.
Well, I mean, the thing of it is that, you know, the idea of China, that Trump has made China into the rules-based international icon is really wild. But also, all of these countries have to look at the fact that, okay, you had a USMCA deal between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., and what happened with that, right? Like Trump during, you know, I covered all of the last administration, and he went back so many times between things would be okay with China, then they weren't, then he would be mad. I think that at this point, you just don't have the certainty with Trump that even if you put forward a deal, that he will stick to it, and that 2 months down the line, he won't get mad at something else and hold this over your head again.
And so let me just play a little bit of what the president said yesterday to give us the sense of the switch of him blinking on China.
I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to play hardball with China. I'm going to play hardball with you, President Xi. No. We're going to be very nice. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high.
Right. Well, I mean, as far as the markets are concerned, they're reacting to any shred of good news because they're desperate to rally. But when Trump is still talking about reducing tariffs substantially, the tariffs that are going to be left in place are still going to be substantial. When the CEOs came in yesterday and they said they're going to be empty shelves in their stores because of all this, there still could be severe supply chain disruptions.
And that's really, we shouldn't lose sight of why we got here. The markets are one thing, but it's also that reporting that I believe Axios had first. We have confirmed here that the big box CEOs of Home Depot, I believe it was, and Walmart went in and told the president, we knew that they had a meeting, and said, our shelves are going to be empty. And that's the kind of thing that understandably scared him. I want to look at another dynamic that has been really rattling the markets this week, and that is the threat against Jay Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair. Listen to what the president said yesterday on the notion of potentially firing him.
None whatsoever. Never did. The press runs away with things. No, I have no intention of firing him.
What we ran with was a post from you, Mr. President, and I'll show what that was. It was actually a series of posts. One last week on Thursday where he said Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. And then on Monday, which is probably one of the big things that caused the sell-off that began the week was the post that you're seeing on the right of your screen, Mr. Too Late, a major loser. And Mr. Too Late, we suspect, was Jerome Powell. That obviously is now clear to President Trump was not a good thing for the markets.
Well, one of the things that
Never
Trump
mind
likes
the
to
independence
do,
of the Fed.
Correct. And Jay Powell, for his part, has said over and over again that he would not step down if fired. So that would potentially set up a battle royale between the president and his Fed chair, and the Fed chair would likely win on legal grounds. But even beyond that, I mean, what the president is doing here and has done forever is trying to jawbone the market, trying to say something and put something out there publicly that he believes will move the market in the direction that he wants. And here I'm talking about interest rates and the bond market. Interest rates have been stubbornly high, which not only means that Americans will pay more for houses and cars, but also means that the U.S. will face exorbitantly more expensive bills for its own programs. Trump has been saying lower interest rates, lower interest rates, lower interest rates. And then I think he thought that if he says, I'm going to fire Jay Powell, that the market would move down just on the idea. The market did the opposite. And so that was the warning that I think his team took away from that.
Yeah, I think the fear about the bond market and people not rushing into U.S. bonds, I think that has really scared this administration because people don't seem to have as much confidence in the full faith and credit of the United States. And I do think that there have been questions about whether Trump will respond to the markets. He has not responded as much as he did in the first term, but he is responding. Like there do seem to be limits.
With us now is Stephen Moore, who advised former President Trump during his 2016 election. Thank you so much, Stephen, for being with us. Let's talk a little bit about this. How do you see Trump's turnaround on China?
Well, you know, you guys started this conversation, Brianna, talking about this being a Trump retreat. I don't think I would use that word. I think this was kind of a strategic advance where Trump is being realistic about what's happened with the markets over the last few weeks, and also I'm hearing from my friends over there in the White House who are working on this issue every hour that they are making some advances with China, and that's good news for everybody because you're quite right that what the outcome here we all want to see is that China is more cooperative. They have incredibly aggressive and policies on trade that are, I would describe as being unfair to Americans. And so if those deals continue to be made, I think you'll continue to see the stock market rise the way it has in the last couple of days. There's still a lot of ground to be made up based on the losses we've seen in the last month or so.
Why would you say China's being more cooperative?
Because they're talking about lowering some of their tariffs, reducing some of their very aggressive non-tariff trade barriers that make it very difficult for Americans to sell our farm products, our manufacturing products and so on, and even our technology products to the Chinese. And so, look, this is based on, there's no deal yet. I want to be clear on that. But
yeah, so
but
when you say they're
softening
talking about that, okay, so you're saying in formal discussions with the White House? I mean, how are you characterizing this?
No, not formal discussions, but phone calls. I don't think we describe those as being formal, but basically Trump and his economics team saying you're going to have to make concessions in these areas, and China has apparently really softened their position, their opposition to that. Look, remember, China's stock market has been crushed, and their economy is in a lot of trouble too. So it's in the interest of both countries to come to an agreement that creates a more level playing field.
Okay, so I hear you take issue with the description of this being a turnaround, but we should just be clear, the president has gone from a 145% tariff on China to talking about that being reduced. 145% is very high. Yes. He says it won't be that high. It won't be anywhere near that high. Bessent's talking about the rebalancing of trade. Okay, so if you want to, yes. I don't want to have a semantic debate with you about this idea of a turnaround. But whatever you do, whether you, it's described as a turnaround or as you call it a strategic advance, Is it recognition that they weren't getting anywhere with playing rhetorical hardball the way they were and having that 145% tariff that we heard the Treasury Secretary say this is essentially stopping all trade? This is basically essentially a trade embargo. Is it a recognition of that not working?
Well, yeah. Well, Brianna, I think you're missing the main point, that Trump is an incredibly strategic negotiator. I mean, he's the best there is. And that his opening bid was 145%. Now, I don't think anybody ever really thought we were going to impose 145% tariffs, although the Chinese were certainly terrified of that prospect. And I think what that opening bid did was force the Chinese to start softening their position, and eventually they will come to, I feel very confident they will come to the negotiating table, and the U.S. will come out ahead in those negotiations because the situation is so unlevel right now. But look, there's also tariffs on all these other countries that need to be resolved too. So this isn't just about China, it's about getting deals from the Europeans, from Mexico, Canada, Japan. And what I'm here to tell you is it appears that there is progress on all of those fronts.
Yeah, China's the big one, obviously, and that was the one that stood beyond the 10%,
yes,
which is why a lot of focus on it. So
that's right.
CEOs of Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's came to the White House on Monday. They warned Trump about supply chain interruptions. They warned him about negative effects on consumers. He's been hearing concerns about the negative effects of his talking about Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, the way he has been talking about it. Did that kind of counsel that he received help him soften his tone?
Well, let me say that, there are problems in the supply chain, no question about it, with the tariff talk. And I think that's another reason that Trump has basically looking for ways to reduce those tariffs so that we don't see higher prices when we go to Walgreens or we go to Home Depot and these other stores. With respect to Jerome Powell, I would say that we were all outraged, that is, those who favor Trump, by the speech that was given by Jerome Powell last week. It was really, I've been following this for 40 years. I thought it was the most outrageous partisan attack against a new president that I've ever seen, and I think it was out of bounds, and it didn't take into account all the positive things that Trump are doing on the economy. Now, that being said, and people like myself were saying, Jerome Powell has to go, but the markets clearly don't want Jerome Powell out. They don't want him out right now.
And Stephen, I just want to be clear, Jerome Powell was reflecting what a lot of just economists are saying. So if what you're looking for is just straight shooting from Jerome Powell, that really did seem to be what it was. Separately, I want to ask you about the Treasury Secretary Bessent saying
let me push you back. Hold on, let me make a point about this. Okay, that's a fair point. A lot of the economists and a lot of the businesses were saying, these policies were harmful. But my God, I mean, Joe Biden came in and spent $5 trillion, sent inflation up to 25% increase in prices. Jerome Powell never made that kind of speech against in fact, he accommodated Biden's policies. So I think that's something that really angered us. I mean, I challenge you to find anything that Jerome Powell ever said criticizing Biden's reckless policies.
I think you heard certainly concerns about inflation, and you saw reflections on decisions that were made about interest rates when it came to inflation. We certainly saw that, right? We certainly saw that. But I want Stephen. I have one. Stephen, I want to get this question in, and we're going to have to wrap it up if we can't get past this.
Jerome Powell was the one who allowed the inflation to go up by 9% in 2022, which was the highest rate of inflation we've had in 30 years. And so it's hard to defend what he did back then, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I will say there was massive spending, there were concerns raised about inflation, and there was also the navigation of a soft landing to avoid a recession. We have to be clear about that. That doesn't mean that people weren't hurt by economic policy, to be clear. Just finally, real quick, the Treasury Secretary said America first isn't America alone. But Stephen, that's going to be news to a lot of countries. Is it too late for that message from the Trump administration?
No, not at all. Look, I mean, Trump believes in free and fair trade. He understands the global trading system, and I believe that this will be resolved sometime in the next 3 months or so. And once it is resolved, I think we'll have freer and fairer trade, which will lead to more global integration, and everyone comes out ahead. You know, the only thing I would say, Brianna, for people who may oppose Trump's policies, and I'm more of a free trade guy than he is, but all Trump is saying to these other countries is lower your tariffs in a way that we have a level playing field. I'm not so sure why people think that that's an unfair position to take. It's putting America first and saying, look, we've lowered our tariffs. China, Japan, UK, the EU, you're going to have to lower your tariffs too to create a fairer trading system.
Lesotho, among others. Stephen Moore, thank you so much. Great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Take care.